The gaslight flickered against the mahogany walls of Salvatore Torrino's private office in the back of the Golden Rose Theatre. It was November 1899, and the crisp Chicago wind rattled the windows of the establishment that served as both legitimate business and front for his family's operations. Salvatore adjusted his gold pocket watch, a gift from his late father, as he reviewed the ledgers spread across his desk. At 28, he had inherited more than just the family business. The weight of tradition, honor, and an arranged marriage to Francesca Benedetti pressed heavily on his shoulders. The union would strengthen ties between two powerful Italian families, but it would also seal his fate in a loveless partnership designed purely for business advantage. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called, not looking up from his papers. "Boss, the new girl is here for her audition," announced Tommy Ricci, his trusted lieutenant. The stocky man shifted nervously in the doorway, his bowler hat clutched in weathered hands. Salvatore sighed and closed the leather-bound ledger. The Golden Rose needed fresh talent to maintain its reputation as Chicago's premier entertainment venue. The theatre attracted wealthy patrons who paid handsomely for quality performances, providing perfect cover for his other enterprises. "Send her in," he said, straightening his black wool vest and adjusting his silk tie. The woman who entered took his breath away. She moved with a dancer's grace, her emerald dress modest yet elegant, befitting the era's standards. Her auburn hair was pinned in a fashionable Gibson girl style, and her green eyes sparkled with determination and intelligence. "Mr. Torrino, I presume." Her voice carried a slight Irish accent, musical and confident. "I am Rose O'Malley. I understand you have an opening for a performer." Salvatore stood, his dark eyes studying her carefully. In his world, trust was earned through blood and loyalty, but something about this woman intrigued him beyond mere physical attraction. "Miss O'Malley," he said, gesturing to the leather chair across from his desk. "Please sit. Tell me about your experience." Rose settled gracefully, her hands folded in her lap. "I performed at the Majestic in New York for 2 years. I can sing, dance, and act. I have references if you require them." "And what brings you to Chicago?" Salvatore asked, resuming his seat. He noticed how she held his gaze without flinching, unusual for most women in his presence. "A fresh start," she replied simply. "New York became complicated." Salvatore understood complicated. His entire life revolved around complications, from managing his territory to avoiding both rival families and federal investigators who had begun scrutinizing Italian-American businesses more closely. "The position pays $15 per week, with additional compensation for special performances," he explained. "You would perform 6 nights weekly, with Sundays reserved for rest. The Golden Rose maintains high standards for both talent and conduct." Rose nodded. "I understand completely, Mr. Torrino." "There is one more thing," Salvatore continued, leaning back in his chair. "In 3 weeks, we host a special gala for Chicago's elite. The mayor, businessmen, and their wives will attend. I need someone who can handle such an audience with sophistication." "I can manage that," Rose assured him. As they discussed details, Salvatore found himself drawn to her quick wit and genuine passion for performance. When she mentioned her love for Italian opera, particularly Puccini's works, his interest deepened further. "You appreciate opera?" he asked, surprise evident in his voice. "La Bohème is magnificent," Rose replied with genuine enthusiasm. "The emotion, the tragedy, the beauty of love against impossible odds." Something stirred in Salvatore's chest, an unfamiliar warmth he had never experienced with Francesca during their formal courtship meetings. After Rose left with promises to begin rehearsals the following Monday, Salvatore sat alone in his office, troubled by emotions he could not name. In 2 months he would marry Francesca Benedetti, securing his family's future and honoring his father's dying wish. But for the first time in his life, duty felt like a prison sentence. Rose O'Malley's first week at the Golden Rose exceeded all expectations. Her rendition of popular ballads like After the Ball and The Sidewalks of New York captivated audiences nightly. The theatre's patrons, dressed in their finest evening wear, applauded enthusiastically as she performed on the gaslit stage adorned with velvet curtains and gilded fixtures. Salvatore found excuses to watch her performances from the back of the house, telling himself he was merely ensuring quality control. In reality, he was mesmerized by her grace and talent. Rose commanded the stage with a confidence that reminded him of the great performers he had seen at La Scala during his youth in Sicily. "Boss, the Benedetti family sent word," Tommy interrupted one evening as Salvatore observed Rose's rehearsal. "They want to discuss wedding arrangements. The ceremony is set for January 15th. The reminder hit Salvatore like a physical blow. He nodded curtly, never taking his eyes off Rose as she practiced a particularly challenging piece by Stephen Foster. After the theatre closed, Salvatore often remained in his office, reviewing accounts and coordinating his various business interests. The neighborhood protection services, import operations, and gambling establishments required constant attention. Federal agents had been asking questions about Italian businesses lately, making discretion more important than ever. On Thursday evening, Rose knocked on his office door long after the last patron had departed. "Mr. Torrino, might I have a word?" she asked, entering at his invitation. "Of course, Miss O'Malley. Is everything satisfactory?" Rose approached his desk, her expression serious. "I wanted to thank you for this opportunity, but also to address something I have observed." Salvatore raised an eyebrow. "Oh? The other girls mentioned you are engaged to be married soon," she said directly. "I have noticed your attention during my performances, and I believe it appropriate to establish clear boundaries." Her frankness surprised him. Most people approached him with either fear or excessive deference. "You speak very directly, Miss O'Malley." "My father always said honesty prevents misunderstandings," Rose replied. "I have no intention of complicating your personal affairs or my employment here." Salvatore stood and walked to the window overlooking the theatre's main floor. The chairs were stacked, and the stage stood empty under dimmed gaslights. "Tell me about your family," he said, changing the subject. Rose seemed to consider whether to answer. "My father was a dock worker. He died in an accident when I was 16. My mother passed 2 years later from consumption. I have been supporting myself since then." "That requires courage," Salvatore observed. "Or desperation," Rose replied with a slight smile. Their eyes met across the room, and Salvatore felt that unfamiliar stirring again. This woman had endured hardship, yet maintained her dignity and strength. Unlike the sheltered daughters of wealthy families he typically encountered, Rose possessed real substance. "The upcoming gala troubles me," he admitted, surprising himself with the confession. "How so?" "It represents everything I am expected to be, everything my family demands. But lately, I question whether duty and happiness can coexist." Rose studied him carefully. "In my experience, Mr. Torrino, we often discover what we truly want only when we are forced to choose between security and passion." Her words lingered in the air between them. Salvatore realized their conversation had shifted into dangerous territory, yet he felt more genuine connection with this woman in 10 minutes than he had experienced with Francesca in months of formal courtship. "I should go," Rose said, perhaps sensing the tension. "Good evening, Mr. Torrino." After she left, Salvatore poured himself a glass of imported wine and contemplated her words. His engagement to Francesca represented everything his world valued: family honor, business advantage, and social position. But Rose represented something else entirely: authenticity, passion, and the possibility of genuine love. For the first time since inheriting his father's empire, Salvatore began to question whether following tradition was worth sacrificing his happiness. The following morning brought news that would complicate matters further. The Benedetti family had moved the wedding date up to December 20th, citing business reasons that required immediate alliance. Salvatore stared at the formal letter, realizing his time for difficult decisions was running shorter than he had anticipated. The gala evening arrived with December's bitter wind howling through Chicago's streets. The Golden Rose had been transformed into an elegant showcase, worthy of the city's most influential citizens. Crystal chandeliers imported from Austria cast warm light over tables adorned with white linens and fresh flowers. The stage featured a backdrop of painted Italian countryside scenes, and the theatre's finest musicians prepared to accompany the evening's performances. Salvatore adjusted his formal black tailcoat and white bow tie, checking his appearance in the mirror of his office. Tonight's event would generate substantial revenue and reinforce his theatre's reputation among Chicago's elite. More importantly, it would demonstrate his family's legitimacy to both business partners and potential rivals. Francesca Benedetti had arrived earlier with her parents, resplendent in a burgundy silk gown with intricate beadwork. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, discussing wedding plans with the wives of prominent businessmen. Every interaction reinforced why their families had arranged this union. She was perfect for the role of a mafia boss's wife. Yet when Rose appeared backstage in her emerald performance gown, Salvatore felt his carefully constructed world shift on its axis. "Miss O'Malley, you look magnificent," he said, approaching her in the wings. "Thank you, Mr. Torrino. I hope tonight's performance meets your expectations." Before he could respond, Tommy Ricci appeared at his elbow. "Boss, there's a problem. 3 men from the Rossetti family just walked in uninvited. They're asking questions about your territorial agreements." Salvatore's jaw tightened. The Rossetti family had been challenging his authority over several lucrative neighborhoods, and their appearance at tonight's gala was clearly a provocative move. "Where are they seated?" he asked. "Table 7, near the stage." Salvatore glanced at Rose, who had overheard the exchange. Her expression remained calm, but he detected concern in her green eyes. "Handle them diplomatically," he instructed Tommy. "This is neither the time nor place for confrontation." As the evening progressed, Salvatore moved between tables, greeting Chicago's mayor, several aldermen, and prominent businessmen who contributed to his various enterprises. The performance began with a quartet singing popular Stephen Foster melodies, followed by a comedy act that had the audience laughing heartily. When Rose took the stage for her solo performance, the room fell silent. She began with "Danny Boy," her clear voice carrying the Irish ballad's emotional weight to every corner of the theatre. Several women dabbed their eyes with handkerchiefs, and even the hardened businessmen seemed moved by her artistry. Halfway through her second song, Salvatore noticed movement from table 7. The Rossetti men were rising, their hands moving suspiciously toward their coat pockets. Years of survival instincts told him trouble was imminent. Without thinking, he moved quickly toward the stage. As the Rossetti lieutenant began reaching for what was undoubtedly a weapon, Salvatore stepped into full view of the audience and walked directly to Rose. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying over the theatre, "please allow me to present our exceptional performer, Miss Rose O'Malley." Before anyone could react, before the Rossetti men could complete their threatening gesture, before his own rational mind could stop him, Salvatore took Rose's face in his hands and kissed her passionately. The theatre erupted in surprised murmurs and scattered applause, assuming this was part of the performance. The Rossetti men, caught off guard by the unexpected romantic display, hesitated just long enough for Tommy and his associates to position themselves strategically throughout the room. But as Salvatore's lips met Rose's, something profound occurred that had nothing to do with diffusing danger. The kiss, initially intended as distraction, ignited emotions he had never experienced. Rose's initial surprise melted into reciprocation, and for several heartbeats, the crowded theatre disappeared entirely. When they separated, Rose's eyes searched his face with wonder and confusion. The audience's applause grew louder, many assuming they had witnessed a planned romantic finale to her performance. "Bravo," someone called from the crowd. Salvatore helped Rose take her bow, his hand trembling slightly as it touched hers. Over the applause, he could see Francesca's shocked expression from across the room, her parents equally stunned beside her. The Rossetti men had quietly departed during the commotion, their plan disrupted by the unexpected turn of events. As the evening wound down and guests began departing, Salvatore knew his impulsive action had changed everything. He had kissed Rose O'Malley in front of Chicago's elite, including his fiancée, and discovered something that terrified him more than any rival family or federal investigation. He was falling deeply, hopelessly in love. The morning after the gala brought harsh reality crashing down upon Salvatore's world. He sat in his office, nursing black coffee and contemplating the wreckage of his carefully ordered life. The kiss with Rose had accomplished its immediate purpose, preventing violence at the gala, but the consequences were far more complex than he had anticipated. A sharp knock interrupted his brooding. "Enter!" he called, expecting Tommy with the morning's business reports. Instead, Francesca Benedetti swept into the room, her dark eyes blazing with fury. She wore a fashionable navy walking dress and carried herself with the righteous indignation of a woman publicly humiliated. "Salvatore Torrino, you will explain yourself immediately," she demanded, not bothering with pleasantries. Salvatore stood, straightening his vest. "Francesca, I can explain. Explain how you kissed that Irish singer in front of half of Chicago. Explain how you made me appear foolish before everyone who matters in this city. Her voice rose with each word. It was a business decision, Salvatore said carefully. The Rossetti family was planning to disrupt the evening. I needed to create a distraction. Francesca's laugh was bitter. A business decision. You could have achieved the same result by having your men escort them out. Instead, you chose to humiliate your future wife publicly. She moved closer to his desk, her hands clenched in fury. My father is beside himself. He believes you have lost respect for our family's agreement. He is considering calling off the engagement entirely. For a moment, Salvatore felt a flutter of hope at the possibility of escape from the arranged marriage. But he quickly suppressed it, knowing the business ramifications would be catastrophic. That would be unwise for both our families, he said diplomatically. Our union strengthens territorial agreements and import operations. Emotion should not override practical considerations. Then why did you kiss her? Francesca pressed. If you understand the practical importance of our marriage, why risk everything for a moment's impulse? Salvatore had no answer that would satisfy her or himself. The truth, that he had fallen in love with Rose O'Malley, would destroy everything his father had built. After Francesca departed with threats of family retribution, Tommy entered with disturbing news. Boss, word is spreading through the neighborhood. Some people are saying you showed disrespect to the Benedetti family. Others think you were just putting on a show for the rich folks. And the Rossetti situation, they back down for now, but they are watching for any sign of weakness. If they think your alliance with the Benedettis is cracking, they might make another move. Salvatore rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of leadership more heavily than ever. Every decision affected dozens of families who depended on his organization for their livelihoods. That afternoon, Rose appeared at his office door, her expression troubled. Mr. Torrino, we need to discuss what happened last night. He gestured for her to sit, but she remained standing near the door. I understand you had reasons for your actions, she began carefully, but I need to know where this leaves my employment here. Your position is secure, Salvatore assured her. Last night's events do not affect your professional standing. Rose studied his face intently. But they affect everything else, do they not? Salvatore found himself being honest again, something that happened only with her. Yes, they do. I felt something too, Rose admitted quietly. When you kissed me, it was not merely acting or distraction, but I also understand the impossible position we are both in. Rose, Salvatore began, then stopped himself. Using her first name felt like crossing another line. I know about arranged marriages in your culture, she continued. I know about family honor and business obligations. I do not wish to be the cause of your destruction. Her selflessness only deepened his feelings for her. Here was a woman who understood consequences and was willing to sacrifice her own happiness to protect him. What if I told you that for the first time in my life, I am considering choosing happiness over duty? He asked. Rose's eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. Then I would tell you to think carefully about the price, not just for yourself, but for everyone whose lives depend on your decisions. That evening, Salvatore received a telegram that changed everything. Federal investigators had obtained warrants to examine the business records of several Italian-American enterprises in Chicago. The Torrino family's various operations would be scrutinized within the week. As he read the message, Salvatore realized that his personal crisis had become the least of his problems. The kiss with Rose had occurred at the worst possible moment, just as his entire world was about to come under intense legal examination. The walls were closing in from every direction, and the woman he loved was caught in the middle of it all. The federal investigation struck like lightning through Chicago's Italian community. For 3 days, agents swarmed through businesses, examining ledgers and questioning employees. Salvatore watched from his office window as they methodically documented everything in the Golden Rose, knowing that his legitimate theater operations would withstand scrutiny, but worried about connections they might uncover. On the fourth morning, unexpected salvation arrived in the form of Detective Patrick Murphy, an Irish-American officer who had been secretly feeding information to families willing to pay for advance warning of police activities. Torrino, you have bigger problems than federal agents, Murphy announced, entering the office without invitation. The Rossetti family is planning to hit your main warehouse tonight. They figure with all this government attention, you cannot retaliate without bringing more heat down on everyone. Salvatore absorbed this information while calculating his options. A direct confrontation would indeed attract unwanted federal attention, but allowing the attack would signal weakness to every rival family in Chicago. "What do you want in return for this information?" Salvatore asked. "Safe passage for someone who helped me understand what the Rossettis were planning," Murphy replied. "Your theatre girl, Rose O'Malley. Her cousin works for the Rossetti family and overheard their plans. She convinced him to share the information, but now both their lives are in danger." Salvatore's blood ran cold. Rose had risked everything to protect him, and he had been unaware of her sacrifice. "Where is she now?" "Hiding in the church basement at St. Alphonsus. The Rossettis know she is involved, but have not found her yet." Without hesitation, Salvatore grabbed his coat and gun. "Tommy, gather 6 men and meet me at the warehouse. If the Rossettis want a fight, we will give them one they will remember." "Boss, what about the federal investigation?" "Some things are more important than business," Salvatore replied, surprising his lieutenant with the conviction in his voice. 20 minutes later, Salvatore arrived at St. Alphonsus Church, where Father O'Brien led him to the basement. Rose stood near a small window, her face pale but determined. When she saw him, relief flooded her features. "Salvatore, thank God you are safe. I was terrified they would attack before you received warning." "Why did you risk yourself for me?" he asked, taking her hands in his. "Because I love you," she said simply. "I tried to fight these feelings, tried to convince myself that duty was more important than happiness. But when I learned about the planned attack, I realized I could not live with myself if something happened to you." Salvatore pulled her into his arms, no longer caring about consequences or expectations. "Rose, I love you too. I have loved you since that first day in my office, and I am tired of pretending otherwise. But your engagement, your family obligations, can go to hell," Salvatore interrupted. "I have spent my entire life doing what others expected of me. For once, I want to choose my own path." Rose searched his eyes, seeing the determination there. "What about the Benedettis? What about your business empire? The Benedetti family will survive without this marriage. As for my business, I am realizing that some things matter more than territory and profit." Father O'Brien cleared his throat diplomatically. "Perhaps we should discuss your safety first, then address matters of the heart." Salvatore nodded, his mind already working. "Rose, I want you to leave Chicago tonight. I have contacts in San Francisco who can help you start fresh, away from all this violence." "I will not abandon you now," she protested. "You will not be abandoning me. You will be giving me a reason to survive tonight's confrontation and build a different kind of life." For the next hour, they planned Rose's departure while Tommy handled the warehouse situation. By evening, word came that the Rossetti attack had been repelled, but at considerable cost. 2 men were dead, and the federal agents were asking pointed questions about the violence. As Rose prepared to board the westbound train, Salvatore made his final decision. "Give me 6 months," he told her. 6 months to settle my affairs here, dissolve the engagement honorably, and establish legitimate businesses that can withstand any investigation. And then I will come to California, and we will build a life together based on love rather than obligation." Rose kissed him one last time on the platform, tears streaming down her face. "I will wait for you, Salvatore Torrino, however long it takes." As her train disappeared into the December night, Salvatore felt something he had never experienced before. Hope for a future he had chosen for himself. 6 months later, in San Francisco, Rose O'Malley became Mrs. Salvatore Torrino in a small ceremony attended by a few close friends. Salvatore had kept his promise, liquidating his Chicago operations and investing in legitimate businesses that would support their new life together. The MAFIA boss who had kissed his showgirl to avoid an arranged marriage had discovered that love, once awakened, was the most powerful force of all.